Chapter 4. It was later that morning. There was a new library in the Civic Centre. It was so new, it didn't even have librarians. It had assistant information officers. And it had computers. Wobbler was banned from the computers because of an incident involving a library terminal, the telephone connection to the main computer, another telephone line to the computer at East Slate Air Base 10 miles away, another telephone line to a much bigger computer under a mountain somewhere in America, and almost World War III. At least that's what Wobbler said. The assistant information officer said it was because he got chocolate in the keyboard. But he was allowed to use the microfiche readers. They couldn't think of a good reason to stop him. "What are we looking for, anyway?" said Big Mac. Nearly everyone who died here used to get buried in that cemetery," said Johnny. "So, if we can find someone famous who lived here, and then we can find them in the cemetery, then it's a famous place. There's a cemetery in London with Karl Marx in it, and it's famous for him being dead in it." "Karl Marx? What was he famous for?"
"You're ignorant, you are," said Wobbler. "He was the one who played the harp."
"No, Karl was the one who used to talk like this," said Yoles.
"Actually, he was the one with the cigar," said Wobbler.
"Oh, that's a very old joke," said Johnny severely. "The Marx Brothers, ha ha." "Look, I've got the old newspaper files, the Blackberry Guardian. They go back nearly 100 years. All we've got to do is look at the front pages. That's where famous people would be." "And the back pages?" Why the back pages?" "Sports, you know, famous footballers and all that." "Oh, right, yeah. Hadn't thought of that. All right then, let's get started." "Yeah, but..." "What?" This Karl Marx, yeah? What films is he in?" Johnny sighed. "Listen, he wasn't in any films. He led the Russian Revolution."
"Oh, no, he didn't," said Wobbler. "He just wrote a book called, something like, It's About Time There Was a Revolution, and then the Russians just followed the instructions. The actual leaders were a lot of people with names ending in ski."
"Like Stalin?" said Yoles.
"Yeah, right."
"Stalin means man of steel. I read that he didn't like his real name, so he changed it. It's man of steel in English."
"Well, what was his real name?"
"Oh, his secret identity, you mean?" "What are you talking about now?" "No, wait, I get it. Yeah, man of steel," said Johnny. "Yoles means that he could leap Kremlins in a single bound."
"Oh, don't see why not. I always thought it was unfair the way the Americans got Superman. They've got all the superheroes. I don't see why we couldn't have had Superman round here."
They thought about it. Wobbler then spoke for them all.
"Mind you, though, round here he would have had trouble even being Clark Kent."
They disappeared under the hoods.
What did you say the older man was called?" asked Wobbler after a while.
Alderman Thomas Bowler. Why?"
"Oh, it says here he got the council to build a memorial horse trough in the square in 1905. It came in useful very quickly too, it says here."
Why?"
"Well, it says here, the next day the first motor car ever to arrive in Blackberry crashed into it and caught fire, and they used the water to put the fire out. Says here the council praised Alderman Thomas Bowler for his forward thinking."
They looked at the microfilm viewer. "What's a horse trough?" said Big Mac. It's that big stone trough thing that's outside Loggett and Burnet's Building Society," said Johnny. "The one that's been filled with soil for a tasteful display of dead flowers and beer cans. They used to put water in those things for coach horses to drink out of." "All right, but if cars were just coming in..."
And then building things for horses to drink out of was a bit...
Yeah, I know. Come on, let's keep going.
We built this city on the phone right now. That was at number 2. Told a meeting in Kiev. Prime Minister today. Scaramouche, Scaramouche.
The tuning knob of the little radio behind Mr. Vicenti's grave turned back and forth very slowly, as if it was being moved with great effort. Occasionally it would stop on a program and then move again.
And the next caller,
Babylon. And around it, for quite some distance, the air was cold. In the library, the boys read on. Silence surrounded them. The assistant information officers grew worried, and one of them went to go and find the cleaning fluid and the bent paperclip for getting chocolate out of keyboards.
Let's face it, said Wobbler eventually. This is a town where famous people don't come from. It's practically famous for it.
It says here, said Yoles from his viewer, that Addison Vincent Fletcher of Alma Terrace invented a form of telephone in 1922.
Great. Telephones have been invented years before that one.
It says he said this one was better.
Oh, yeah, said
Wobbler. He dialed an imaginary number.
Hello, is that, who invented the real telephone, anyone?
Thomas Edison.
Sir Humphrey Telephone.
Alexander Graham Bell, said Johnny. Sir Humphrey Telephone?
Yeah, hello, Mr. Bell,
said Wobbler, speaking into an imaginary mouthpiece.
You know that telephone you invented years ago? Well, mine's better, and I'm just off to discover America. Yeah, I know Christopher Columbus discovered it first, but I'm going to discover it better.
Well, makes sense, doesn't it? Said Big Mac. If you're going to discover somewhere, you might as well wait until there's proper hotels and stuff.
When did Columbus discover America, anyway?
1492, said Johnny. There's a rhyme. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Wobbler and Big Mac just looked at him. Actually, he could have got there in 1491, said Yoles, without looking up. But, he had to sail around for a bit because no one could think up a rhyme for one.
Yeah, it could have been Sir Humphrey Telephone, said Big Mac. Stuff always gets named after inventors.
Well, they didn't name the telephone after Bell.
Yeah, they named the bell after Bell, though, said Big Mac. Telephone bells, innit? Proves my point.
Telephones haven't had bells on for years.
That, said Yoles, is due to the famous invention by Fred Buzzer.
I think it's impossible for anyone famous to come from here. Everyone round here is insane.
Got one, said Big Mac, turning the microfiche knob.
Who? Which one?
The footballer, Stanley Wrongway Roundway. He played for Blackberry Wanderers. There's his obituary here, almost half a page.
Yeah? Any good?
It says here he scored a record number of goals.
Oh, that sounds good.
Own goals.
What?
Greatest number of own goals in history of any sport, it says. It says he kept getting overexcited and losing his sense of direction.
Oh.
But he was a good footballer, it says, apart from that. Not exactly Hall of Fame, though.
Here, come and look at this, said Yoles. They clustered around his viewer. He'd found an ancient group photograph of about 30 soldiers, all beaming at the camera.
Yeah, well,
said Wobbler. This is from 1916. They're all going off to war.
Which one?
The first one, you nerd. World War One.
I always wondered why they numbered it, said Big Mac. It's like they expected to have a few more, like buy two, get one free.
It says here, Yoles squinted, it's the Blackberry Old Pals Battalion. They're just going off to fight. They all joined up at the same time. Johnny stared. He could hear people's voices and the background noises of the library, but the picture looked as if it was at the bottom of a dark, square tunnel, and he was falling down it. Things outside the picture were inky and slow. The picture was the centre of the world. Johnny looked at the grinning faces, the terrible haircuts, and the jug-handle ears, the thumbs all up. Even today, nearly everyone in the Blackberry Guardian had their photo taken with their thumb up, unless they'd won Super Bingo, in which case they were shown doing what the photographer thought was a high kick. The newspaper's #1 photographer was known as Jeremy the Thumb. The people in the picture didn't look much older than Big Mac. Well, a couple of them did. There was a sergeant with a moustache like a scrubbing brush, and an officer in jodhpurs, but the rest of them looked like a school photo. Now Johnny was coming back from wherever he'd been. The picture dropped away again, became just an oblong on a page on a screen. He blinked. There was a feeling like on an aeroplane when it's about to land, and his ears went pop. But this time it was happening with his brain instead. Anyone know what the Somme is? Said Yoles. No? Oh, well, that's where they went, anyway. Some place in France. Any of them win any medals? Said Johnny, struggling back into the real world. That'd be famous if there's someone in the cemetery with a lot of medals. Yoles spun the wheels of the viewer. I'll look ahead a few issues. There's bound to be something if... Oh, hey, look at this. They all tried to get under the hood at once. Silence came back as they realized what he'd found. I knew it was important, Johnny thought. What's happening to me? Wow, said Wobbler. I mean, all those names. Everyone killed in this one big battle. Without saying anything, Johnny ducked into the other reader and wound it backwards until he found the cheery photograph. Are they listed in alphabetical order? He asked. Yeah, said Yoles. I'll read out the names under the photo then. Armitage K, Atkins T. Yes? No, said Yoles. Sergeant Atterbury F. Yes? Hey, there's 3 here from Canal Street. That's where my gran lives. Blazer, Constantine, Fraser, Frobisher. Yes, 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 yes. They went on until the end of the caption. They all died, said Johnny eventually. 4 weeks after the picture was taken. All of them. Except for Atkins T, said Yoles. It says here what a Pals battalion was, by the way. It says people all from one town or even one street could all join the army together if they wanted, and they all got sent to the same place. I wonder if they all got there. Well, eventually, he added. That's dreadful, said Big Mac. Probably sounded like a good idea at the time. Sort of jolly. Yeah, but 4 weeks? I mean... You're always saying you can't wait to join the army. You said you were sorry the Gulf War was over, and all the legs of your bed are off the ground because of all them copies of Guns and Ammo underneath it. Yeah, well, war, yeah, said Big Mac. Proper fighting, innit, with M16s and stuff. Not just all going off grinning and then getting shot. Well, they marched off together because they were friends, and they got killed. They stared at the little square of light with the names on it, the long, long line of cheery thumbs. Except for Atkins T, said Johnny. I wonder what happened to him. Well, it was 1916, said Yoles. If he's still alive, he'll be dead. Any of them on your list? asked Wobbler. Johnny checked. No, he said eventually. There's 1 or 2 people with the same name but the wrong initial. Everyone around here used to get buried up there. Perhaps he came back from the war and moved away somewhere else, said Yoles. Yeah, be a bit lonely around here after all, said Big Mac. They looked at him. Sorry, he said.
I'm fed up with this, said Wobbler, pushing his chair back. It's not real. There's no one special in there. It's just people, and it's creepy. Come on, let's all go down in the mall.
I've found out what happens to dead bodies when old graveyards are built on, said Yoles, as they stepped out into the Tupperware daylight. My mum knows. They get taken to some kind of a storage place called a necropolis. That's Latin for City of the Dead.
Yuck, said Wobbler.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like where Superman lives, said Big Mac.
Necropolis, said Wobbler, zooming his hands through the air. By day, mild-mannered corpse. By night, zombie man.
Johnny remembered the grinning young faces, not much older than Wobbler's. Wobbler, he said, if you make another joke like that.
What?
Well, just don't, right? I mean it. Shh, mean, yo, know what I'm saying? Shh, told the government that, fact, the whales enjoy being hunted, Bob, and click. So, that's wireless telegraphy, is it? Ha, so much for Countess Alice Radioni.
I was an Ovaltine when I was a little boy. That was during the war, the one against the Germans. Did I ever tell you? We used to sing along with the people on the wireless. We are the Ovaltine.
What? Who was Countess Alice Radioni? Which war against the Germans?
What? How many have we had?
2 so far. No, come on. Radioni? It was Marconi who invented the radio. Ha! And you know who he stole the idea from? Who cares who invented the wretched thing? Will you listen to what the living are doing?
Plotting to steal our cemetery. That is what they are doing.
Yeah, but I didn't know all this were going on. Did you? All this music and the things they're talking about. Who is Shakespeare's sister, and why is she singing on the wireless? What is a Batman? And they said the last Prime Minister was a woman. That can't be possible. Women can't even vote.
Yes, they can.
Hurrah! Well, they couldn't in my time. There's just so much we don't know. So then, why don't we find out? The dead fell silent. Or rather more silent than usual.
How?
The man on the wireless said you can ring the wireless station on the telephone to discuss problems that affect us all today. A phoning in program, he said.
Well?
There's a phone booth out in the street.
Yes, but that's outside.
Not far outside.
Yes, but
the little boy stood in front of us and talked to us, and he was so frightened. And we can't walk 6 feet? The speaker was Mr. Vicenti. He looked through the crumbling railings to the street outside with the eye of a man who'd spent much of his life escaping.
But this is our place. This is where we belong.
Yes, but it's only a few steps. It wasn't really much of a mall, but it was all there was to hang out in. Johnny had seen films of American shopping malls. They must have had different sorts of people in America, he'd thought. They all looked cool. All the girls were beautiful, and the place wasn't crowded with little kamikaze grandmothers, or mothers with 7 children, or Blackberry United football fans walking 10 abreast singing the famous football song, You couldn't hang out properly in a place like that. All you could do was hang on. The four of them hung on in the burger bar. Yoles carefully read the pamphlet about how no rainforests were chopped down to make beef burgers. Big Mac had his favourite mega jumbo fries with 15 packets of relish.
I wonder if I could get a job here, said Wobbler.
No chance. Manager would take one look at you and see where all the profits would go.
Are you saying I'm fat?
Gravitationally challenged, said Yoles without looking up. Enhanced, innit? Said Big Mac. Wobbler's lips moved as he tried out these words.
Oh, I'd rather be fat, he said. Can I finish up your onion rings?
Yeah, anyway, there's loads of people who want jobs here. You have to have a degree.
What? Just to make burgers?
Now the job's around. They're shutting down all the factories around here. Nothing to do. No one's making anything anymore.
Someone's making something. What about all the stuff in the shops?
Yeah, that's all made in Taiwan land or somewhere. What sort of future are we gonna have, eh? That's right, eh? Eh, Johnny? What? You've just been staring at nothing the whole time, you know that.
Yeah, what's happened? Said Wobbler. Some dead people coming for a takeout?
No.
Well, what are you thinking about then?
Thumbs, said Johnny, still staring at the wall.
What?
What? Said Johnny, waking up again.
What about thumbs?
Oh, nothing. My mother said last night that there's a lot of people angry about the cemetery being sold, said Yoles. Everyone's moaning about it, and Pastor William says that anyone who builds on there will be cursed into the 7th generation.
Yeah, but he always says that kind of thing, said Wobbler. Anyway, United Amalgamated Consolidated Holdings probably won't worry about that sort of thing. They've probably got a vice president in charge of being cursed.
Yeah, and he probably gets his secretary to deal with it, said Big Mac. It won't stop anything anyway, said Yoles. There's bulldozers already on the other side of the fence.
Does anyone know what United Amalgamated Consolidated Holdings do?
It says in the paper that they're a multinational information retrieval and enhancement facility, said Yoles. It said on the news that it'll provide 300 jobs. For all the people who used to work at the old rubber boot factory, said Big Mac. Yoles just shrugged. That's how it goes. Hey, are you all right, Johnny? What? Are you okay? You're just staring at the wall. What? Oh, yeah, I'm okay.
He's upset about them dead soldiers.
Yoles leaned across the table. Look, that's all in the past, right? It's just gone. It's a shame they died, but, well, they'd be dead anyway, wouldn't they? It's just history. It has nothing to do with, with now. Mrs. Ivy Witherslade was talking to her sister in the phone booth on Cemetery Road when someone knocked impatiently on the glass. And that was odd, because there was no one there. But she felt very cold and suddenly uneasy, as if she was walking on somebody's grave. She stopped telling her sister about her legs and what the doctor said about them, and went home quickly. If Johnny had been there, he would have heard what happened next, but he wasn't. So everybody else would have heard the wind, and perhaps, just perhaps, the faintest of arguments. You should know, Mr. Fletcher. You invented it. Actually, that was Alexander Graham Bell, Miss Liberty. I just improved upon it. Well, make it work. Let me speak to the man on the wireless machine. Was it really Alexander Graham Bell? Yes, Alderman. All right. I thought it was Sir Humphrey Telephone. The telephone stayed on its hook, but there were a few electric crackles and pops from somewhere in the machinery. I think I've mastered the intricacies, Mrs. Liberty.
Let me do the talking. The people's voice must be heard.
Frost was forming on the inside of the telephone booth.
Certainly not. You are a Bolshevik.
What did Sir Humphrey Telephone invent, then?
Mr. Fletcher, be so good as to expedite the electric communication.
When there wasn't the burger bar to hang out in, and when they weren't allowed in J&J Software because of whatever Wobbler's latest crime was, there was only the fountain area with the sad, dying trees in it, or the Groovy Sounds record store, which was pretty much like any record store would be if it was called Groovy Sounds. Anyway, Yoles wanted to buy a tape for his collection.
Famous British brass bands, said Wobbler, looking over his shoulder.
Yeah, but this is a good one. It's got the old Blackberry Rubber Boot Factory band playing the Floral Dance. It's a very famous piece.
You're just basically not black, are you? I'm going to report you to the Rastafarians.
Yeah, well, you like reggae and blues, said Yoles.
Oh, that's different.
Johnny listlessly shuffled through the tapes, and then froze. There was a voice he recognised. It was crackly with static, but it sounded a lot like Mrs. Sylvia Liberty, and it was coming over the radio. The radio was on the counter, tuned to wonderful Radio Blackberry's Mike's radio show, which was as excellent and totally bodacious as 2 hours of phone-ins and traffic reports from the Blackberry bypass could be. This time, it was different. The phone-in had been about the council's proposal to knock down the old fish market, which was going to happen no matter what anyone said, but it was a good subject for people to moan about. Well, what I say is, hello, this is Mrs. Sylvia Liberty speaking on the electric telephone. Hello. Not to be allowed, in my opinion. Hello. Click, fizz, crackle. I demand to be heard this instant. The fish market is of no importance whatsoever. In his little studio on top of the Blackberry and Slate Insurance Society, Mike's stared at his engineer, who stared at his switchboard. There was no way of cutting off the intrusive voice. It was coming in on all telephone lines at once. Hi, he said. The caller on, all the lines. You listen to me, young man, and don't cut me off to start playing any more of your phonograph cylinders. Do you realize that innocent citizens are being evicted? Click, garble, whir, fizz. Many years of valued service to the community, crackle, merely because of an accident of birth. You listen to young John...
The people's shroud is deepest black. We're coming back.
Stop that this instant, William. You are nothing but a Bolshevik agitate. No one heard the rest of the sentence, because the engineer had pulled all the plugs and hit the switchboard with a hammer. Johnny and his friends had gathered around the radio.
You get some real loonies on these phone-ins, said Wobbler. Have you ever listened to Mad Jim's Late Night Explosion?
He's not mad, said Yoles. He just says he is. And all he does is play old records and go, yeah, and yowza yowza a lot. That's not mad. That's just pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They all looked at Johnny. They all looked like people with something on their minds.
Said Wobbler.
Johnny, said Big Mac. That was them, was it? Said Yoles. Yes, it was them. It didn't sound like normal radio. How can they use the phone? I don't know. I suppose some of them knew how to use the phone when they were alive, and maybe being dead's a bit like electricity or something.
They nearly said your name, said Wobbler.
Yeah.
Who was that one that was singing?
I think it was William Stickers. He's a bit of a communist. Ah, I didn't think there were any communists left these days, said Yoles. Yeah, there aren't, and he's one of them. You know, any minute now, Rod Sterling is going to come walking in here with a big book. You know, like in the Twilight Zone. How come they know what's on the radio? Said Yoles. Oh, I lent them my granddad's transistor. You know what I think? I think you've started something. Yeah, that's what I think too.
Nah, said Wobbler. Come on. Voices on the radio, I mean. That's just mucking about. It could be anything. And kids ringing up and messing about. Come on. Ghosts don't phone up radio stations.
I saw this film once where they all came out of the telephone, said Big Mac, winner of the All Blackberry Mr. Tactful Championship.
You just shut up, yeah? I don't believe you.
It was very, very chilly inside the phone box. I must say, electricity is very easy to master when you're dead.
What are you doing, Mr. Fletcher?
Very easy indeed. Who shall we talk to next?
We must speak to the town hall.
Ah, but it's a Saturday, Mrs. Liberty. There'll be no one there.
Then try to find young Johnny. I don't know what he means about trying to find famous people buried in the cemetery. We're here, after all.
Ah, I'll keep trying. It's amazingly easy to understand.
Where has Mr. Stickers gone?
He's trying to listen to Radio Moscow, whatever that is, on the wireless telegraphy apparatus.
I say, this is rather invigorating, you know. I've never been out of the cemetery before.
Yes, it's a new lease on life. You can escape from almost anything, said Mr. Vicenti. There was a faint cough. They looked around. Mr. Grimm was watching them through the railings. The dead seemed to sober up. They always became more serious in front of Mr. Grimm. They shuffled their spectral feet. You're outside, said Mr. Grimm. You know that's wrong.
Only a little way, Eric, said the alderman. You can't do any harm. It's for the good of the...
It's wrong. We don't have to listen to him, said Mr. Vicenti. You'll get in terrible trouble, said Mr. Grimm. No, we won't. It's dabbling with the known. You'll get into dreadful trouble, and it won't be my fault. You are bad people. He turned and walked back to his grave. Dial the number, said Mr. Vicenti. The others seemed to wake up.
You know, said Mrs. Liberty, he may have a point.
Forget about Mr. Grimm, said Mr. Vicenti. He opened his hands. A white dove shot out of his sleeve and perched on the phone booth, blinking. Dial the number, Mr. Fletcher. Hello, Directory Inquiries. What name, please? He's called Johnny Maxwell, and he lives in Blackberry. Oh, I'm afraid that's not sufficient information. Oh, that's all that we... Listen, I can see how it works. There's a connection. How many of us are there in here?
Can I try, please? This is a lot better than those seances.
The operator rubbed her headset. For some reason, her ear had gone cold. Ow! She ripped the headset off. The operator on her right leaned over. What's up, Don? It felt... They looked at the switchboard. Lights were coming on everywhere, and it was beginning to be covered in frost. The thing is that all throughout history there have been people who couldn't invent things because the rest of the world wasn't ready. Leonardo da Vinci didn't have the motors or materials to make his helicopter. Sir George Cayley invented the internal combustion engine before anyone else had invented gasoline. He tried to run it on pellets of gunpowder. Really, it was nearly the external combustion engine. In the life of Addison Vincent Fletcher, he had spent long hours with motors and relays and glowing valves and bits of wire, pursuing a dream that the world didn't even have a name for yet. In his phone booth, dead Mr. Fletcher laughed. It had a name now. He knew exactly what a computer was when he saw one. Chapter 5. Johnny went home. He didn't dare go back to the cemetery. It was Saturday evening, and he'd forgotten about the visit. "You've got to come," said his mother. "You know she likes to see you." "No, she doesn't," said Johnny. "She forgets who I am. She calls me Peter. I mean, that's my dad's name. And the place smells like old ladies. Anyway, why doesn't Grandad ever come? She's his wife." "He says he likes to remember her as she was," said his mother. "Besides, it's Marky and Mo's Saturday Spectacular. You know he doesn't like to miss it." "All right. We don't have to stay long." About 10 minutes after Johnny had gone, the phone rang. Grandad dealt with it in his normal way, which was to shout, "Phone!" while not taking his eyes off the screen. But it went on ringing. Eventually, grumbling and losing the remote control down the side of the cushion where it wouldn't be found for 2 days, he got up and shuffled out into the hall. "Yes? Oh, he's not here. He's gone out." "Who? Well, is it? Never. Still doing the conjuring tricks, are you? Haven't seen you about the town much lately." "No. Right. Yeah, that's right. I don't get out myself much these days. How are you yourself?" "Oh, dead. I see. But you've got out to use the telephone? It's wonderful what they can do with science. You sound a long way off." "All right, you are a long way off. I remember that trick you used to do with the handcuffs and the chains and, well, the one you nearly did." Yep. Right, yeah, I'll tell him. Nice to hear from you. Goodbye." He went back and settled in front of the TV again. After a few minutes, a small, worried frown crossed his face. He got up and went and glared at the telephone for a while. It wasn't that Sunshine Acres was a bad place, as far as Johnny could see. It was clean enough and the staff seemed okay. There were bright murals on the walls and a big tank of goldfish in the TV room. But it was more gloomy than the cemetery. It was the way everyone shuffled around quietly and sat waiting at the table for the next meal hours before it was due, just because there wasn't anything else to do. It was as if life had stopped and being dead hadn't started, so all there was to do was just hang around. His grandmother spent a lot of time watching TV in the main lounge, or watching her begonias in her room. At least, his grandmother's body did. He was never certain where her mind was, except that it was often far away and long ago. After a while, he got even more depressed at the conversation between his mother and his grandmother, which was exactly the same as the one last week and the week before that, and then he did what he always did, which was to wander out into the corridor. He mooched towards the door that led out into the garden, staring vaguely at nothing. They never told you about all this ghost stuff at school. Sometimes the world was so weird you didn't know where to start, and social studies and general math weren't a lot of help. Why didn't this sort of thing happen to anyone else? It wasn't as if he went looking for it. He just tried to keep his head down, tried to be someone at the back of the crowd, But somehow everything was more complicated for him than it was for anyone else. The thing was Mr. T. Atkins. He probably wouldn't have noticed it except that the name was in the back of his mind. It was written on a little piece of curling paper stuck in a frame on one of the doors. He stared at it. It filled the whole world, just for a second or two. Well, there could be lots of Atkinses. He'd never find out unless he knocked, though, would he? Open the door, will you, love? My hands are full. There was a large black woman behind him, her arms full of sheets. Johnny just nodded mutely and turned the handle. The room was more or less bare. There was certainly no one else there. I see you come up here every week to see your gran, said the nurse, dumping the sheets on the bare bed. You're a good boy to come see her. Yeah. What was it you were wanting? I thought I'd, drop in to have a chat with Mr. Atkins. Inspiration seized him. I'm doing a project at school about the Blackberry Pals. A project? You could get away with anything if you said you were doing a project. Who were they then, dear? Oh, some soldiers. Mr. Atkins was one of them, I think. Where? Well, he passed away yesterday, dear. Nearly 97, I think he was. Did you know him? Oh, not really. Oh, he was here for years. He was a nice old man. He used to say that when he died, the war would be over. It was his joke. He used to show us his old army paybook. And Tommy Atkins, he'd say, I'm the one. I'm the boy. When I'm gone, it's all over. He used to laugh about that. Oh, what did he mean? I don't know, dear. I just used to smile. You know how it is. The nurse smoothed out the new sheets and pulled a cardboard box from under the bed. This was his stuff. She gave him an odd look. I expect it's all right for you to see. No one ever visited him except a man from the British Legion, regular as clockwork every Christmas. God bless them. They've asked for his medals, you know, but I expect it's all right for you to have a look. If it's for a project. Johnny peered into the box while the nurse bustled around the room. There were a few odds and ends, a pipe, a tobacco tin, a huge old penknife. There was a scrapbook full of sepia postcards of flowers and fields of cabbages and simpering French ladies dressed in what someone must have once thought was a very daring way. Yellowing newspaper cuttings were stuck between the pages, and there was a small wooden box lined with toilet paper containing several medals. And there was a photograph of the Blackberry Pals, just like the one in the old newspaper. Johnny lifted it out very carefully and turned it over. It crackled. Someone had written in violet ink a long time ago the words, Old comrades, where the boys, Kaiser Bill? If you know a better hole, go to it. And then there were 30 signatures underneath. Beside 29 of the signatures, in pencil, someone had made a small cross. They all signed it, he said quietly. He must have got a copy from the paper, and they all signed it. What was that, dear? This photo. Oh, yes. He showed it to me once. And that was him in the war, you know. Johnny turned it over again and found Atkins tea. He looked a bit like Big Mac, with jug-handle ears and a second-hand haircut. And he was grinning. They all were. All the same kind of grin. He used to talk about them a lot, said the nurse. Oh, yeah. His funeral's on Monday, at the Creme. One of us always goes, you know. Well, you have to, don't you? It's only right. He dreamed on Saturday night. He dreamed of Rod Serling walking along Blackberry High Street, but as he was trying to speak impressively to the camera, Big Mac, Yoles, and Wobbler started to peer over his shoulder and say things like, "What's this book about then?" and
"Turn over the page, I've read this bit."
he dreamed of thumbs. And then he woke up and stared at the ceiling. He still hadn't replaced the bits of string that held up the plastic model of the space shuttle. It was forever doing a nosedive. He was pretty sure other kids didn't have lives like this. It just kept on happening. Just when he thought he'd got a grip on the world and saw how it all worked, it sprang something new on him. And what he thought the whole thing was, ticking nicely away, turned out to be just some kind of a joke. His granddad had mumbled a very odd message when Johnny had arrived home. As far as he could understand, Wobbler or someone had been making odd phone calls. His granddad had also muttered something about conjuring tricks. He looked at his clock radio. It said 2:45. There was no chance of going back to sleep, so he tried Radio Blackberry. "Yowza, yowza, 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 and the next caller on Uncle Mad Jim's Bodacious Problem Corner is..." Johnny froze. He had a feeling.
"William Stickers, Mad Jim."
"Hi, Bill. You sound a bit depressed to me."
"It's worse than that. I'm dead, Jim."
"Wow. I can see that's a real downer, Bill. Care to tell us about it?"
"You sound very understanding, comrade. Well..."
Yeah, of course he's understanding, thought Johnny as he struggled into his dressing gown. Everyone phones up Mad Jim in the middle of the night. Last week he talked for 20 minutes to a lady who thought she was a roll of wallpaper. You sound totally sane compared to most of them. He snatched up his Walkman and switched on its radio so that he could go on listening as he ran down the stairs and out into the night.
"And now I just heard there isn't even any Soviet Union anymore. What happened?"
Seems to me you haven't been keeping up with current events, Bill."
"I thought I explained about that."
"Oh, yeah, sure, you said you've been dead. But you're alive again, right?" Mad Jim's voice had that little chuckle in it that he'd always got when he found a real ding-dong on the line and could picture all his insomniac listeners turning up the volume.
"No, still dead. It's not something you get better from, Jim. Now..."
Johnny pattered around the corner and sped along John Lennon Avenue. Mad Jim was saying in his special, dealing with loonies velvet voice, "So, tell us all out here in the land of the living, Bill. What's it like being dead?"
Like? It is extremely dull."
"I'm sure that everyone out there would like to know, Bill. Are there, angels?" Johnny groaned as he turned the corner into Eden Road.
"Angels? Certainly not."
Johnny scurried past the silent houses and dodged between the bollards into Woodville Road. "Oh dear," said Mad Jim in his headset. "I hope there aren't any naughty men with pitchforks then."
"What on earth are you blathering about, man? There's just me and old Tom Bowler and Sylvia Liberty and the rest of them."
Johnny lost the thread of things when a sticking-out piece of laurel hedge knocked his earphones off. When he managed to put them back on, it turned out that William Stickers had been invited to request a record. "I don't think I know the Red Flag, Bill. Who's it by?"
"It is the Internationale, the song of the downtrodden masses."
"Doesn't fire a neuron, Bill. But for you and all the other dead people out there everywhere tonight..." The change in Mad Jim's tone suggested that William Stickers had been cut off. "And we're all dead sooner or later, ain't that the truth? Here's one from the vaults by Michael Jackson. Thriller!" The street lamp by the phone booth was alight, and the little pool of light was all there was to see, unless you were Johnny. The dead had spilled out onto the road. They'd managed to drag the radio with them, and quite a few of them were watching the alderman.
"Ah, well, this is how you have to do it, apparently," he said, moonwalking backwards across the frosty street. "Johnny showed me."
It certainly is a very interesting syncopated rhythm," said Mrs. Liberty. Like this, you say?" The ghostly wax cherries on her hat bounced up and down as she twirled.
"That's right, yeah. And apparently you have to spin round with your arms out and shout, 'Ow!'" said the alderman, demonstrating.
"Oh no," thought Johnny, hurrying towards them. "On top of everything else, Michael Jackson's going to sue me."
"Get down and—" What was it the man on the wireless said?
"A boogie, I believe." They weren't actually very good at it, but they made up for being 80 years behind the times by sheer enthusiasm. In fact, it was a party. Johnny put his hands on his hips. "You shouldn't be doing this." "Why not?" said a dancing dead. "It's the middle of the night." "Well, we don't sleep." I mean, what would your descendants think if they could see you acting like this?" "Serve them right for not visiting us."
"We're making carpets," shouted Mrs. Liberty.
"Cutting a rung," corrected one of the dead.
"A rug," said the alderman, slowing down a bit. "A rug. Cutting a rug. That's what Mr. Benbow, who died in 1931, says it's called. Getting down and boogieing."
"It's been like this all evening," said Mr. Vicenti. He was sitting on the pavement. In fact, he was sitting about a foot above the pavement. "We've found some very interesting stations. What exactly is a DJ?" "Oh, a disc jockey," said Johnny, giving up and sitting down. "He plays the discs and stuff, you know." "Is it some kind of punishment?" "Quite a lot of people like to do it, actually."
"How very strange."
"They are not mentally ill or anything." The song finished. The dancers stopped twirling, but slowly and with great reluctance. Mrs. Liberty pushed her hat back. It had tipped over her eyes. "That was extremely enjoyable," she said. "Mr. Fletcher, be so good as to instruct the man on the wireless to play something more." Interested, despite himself, Johnny padded over to the phone booth. Mr. Fletcher was actually kneeling down with his hands inside the telephone. A couple of other dead people were watching them. One of them was William Stickers, who didn't look very happy. The other was an old man with a mass of white hair in that dandelion clock style known as mad scientist afro.
"Oh, it's you," said William Stickers. "Call this a world, do you?"
"Me? I don't call it anything."
"Was that man on the radio making fun of me, do you think?"
"Oh, no," said Johnny, crossing his fingers. "Mr. Stickers is annoyed because he telephoned Moscow," said the white-haired man. "They said they've had enough revolutions to be going on with, but they would like some soap."
"They're nothing but dirty capitalists," said William Stickers.
"Aye, yeah, but at least they want to be clean capitalists," said Mr. Fletcher. "Where shall we try next?" "Don't you have to put money in?" Mr. Fletcher just laughed. "I don't think we've met," said the white-haired man, extending a slightly transparent hand. "Solomon Einstein, 1861 to 1932. "Oh, like Albert Einstein," said Johnny. "He was my distant cousin, relatively speaking." Johnny got the impression that Mr. Einstein had said that line 1,000,000 times and still wasn't tired of it. Who are you ringing up?" "We're just having a look at the world," said Mr. Fletcher. "What are those things that go round and round in the sky?" I don't know. Frisbees?" "Mr. Vincenti just remembers them. They go around and around the world." Oh, you mean satellites?
Whee!
But how do you know how to...
Oh, I can't explain. Things are a lot simpler, I think. I can see it all laid out.
All of what?
All the cables, all the satellites. Not having a body makes them a lot easier to use, too.
What do you mean?
Well, for one thing, you don't have to stay in one place.
But I thought you...
Mr. Fletcher vanished.
He reappeared a few moments later.
Amazing things, he said. My word, but we will have fun.
I don't understand.
Johnny.
It was Mr. Vicenti. Someone living had managed to get through to Mad Jim. The dead, with much laughter, were trying to dance to a country and western number.
"What's going on?" said Johnny.
"You said you couldn't leave the cemetery."
"No one has explained this to you. They do not teach you in schools."
"Well, we don't get lessons in dealing with ghosts. Sorry, with dead people, I mean."
"We're not ghosts, Johnny. A ghost is a very sad thing. Oh dear, it's hard to explain things to the living. I was alive once, so I know what I'm talking about."
Dead Mr. Vicenti looked at Johnny's blank face.
"We're something else. But now that you see us and hear us, you're making us free. You're giving us what we don't have."
What's that?"
I can't explain. But while you're thinking of us, we're free."
My head doesn't have to spin around and around, does it?"
"Oh, that sounds like a good trick. Can you make it do that?"
"No."
"Then it won't."
"Only, I'm a bit worried that I'm dabbling with the occult." It seemed silly to say it to Mr. Vicenti in his pinstripe trousers and his black little tie and fresh ghostly carnation every day. Or Mrs. Liberty, or the big bearded shape of William Stickers, who would have been Karl Marx if Karl Marx hadn't been Karl Marx first.
"Oh, dear me. I hope you're not dabbling with the occult," said Mr. Vicenti. "Father Kearney, 1891 to 1949, would not like that at all."
"Who's Father Kearney?"
"Oh, a few moments ago he was dancing with Mrs. Liberty."
Oh dear, we do mix things up, don't we?
"Send him away."
Johnny turned. One of the dead was still in the cemetery. He was standing right up against the railings, clasping them like a prisoner might hold the bars of his cell. He didn't look a lot different from Mr. Vicenti, except that he had a pair of glasses. It was amazing that they weren't melting. He had the strongest stare Johnny had ever seen. He seemed to be glaring at Johnny's left ear. "Who's that?" he said.
"Mr. Grimm," said Mr. Vicenti, without looking around.
"Oh, yeah. I couldn't find anything about him in the paper."
"I'm not surprised. In those days, there were things that they didn't put in." "You go away, boy. You're meddling with things you don't understand. You're imperiling your immortal soul and theirs. You go away, you bad boy."
Johnny stared, and then he looked back at the street, at the dancers and the scientists around the telephone booth. A bit farther along there was Stanley Roundway, in shorts that came down to his knees, showing a group of somewhat older dead how to play football. He had L and R stenciled on his football boots. Mr. Vicenti was staring straight ahead.
Said Johnny. "I can't help you there," said Mr. Vicenti. "That sort of thing is up to you."
He must have walked home. He didn't really remember, but he woke up in bed. Johnny wondered what the dead did on Sundays. Blackberry on Sundays went through some sort of boredom barrier and out the other side. Most people did what people traditionally do on Sundays, which was dress up neatly and get in the car and go for family worship at the Mega Super Saver Garden Centre just outside the town. There was a kind of tide of potted plants that were brought back to get killed off by the central heating, just in time for next week's visit. And the mall was locked up. There wasn't even anywhere to hang around.
"The point about being dead in this town," said Wobbler as they mooched along the towpath, "is that it's probably hard to tell the difference."
"Did anyone hear the radio last night?" said Johnny. No one had. He felt a bit relieved.
"When I grow up, I'm going to be out of here like a shot. You just watch. That's what this place is. It's a place to come from, not a place to stay."
"Where are you going to go then?" said Johnny.
"There's this huge big world out there. Mountains, America, Australia. Tons of places."
"You told me the other day you'd probably get a job working at your uncle's place," said Big Mac.
"Yeah, well, I mean, all those places will be there, won't they, for when I get time to go?"
"I thought you were going to be a big man in computers," said Yoles.
"Well, I could be, if I wanted."
"If there's a miracle and you pass math and English, you mean?"
"I'm just more practically gifted."
"You mean you just press keys until something happens?"
"Well, yeah. Often things do happen."
"Well, I'm going to join the army. The Marines, innit?"
"The flat feet and the asthma will be a big help there then. I can just see they'll want you to limp out and wheeze on terrorists."
"I'm pretty certain I want to get a law degree and a medical degree," said Yoles, to keep the peace. "Yeah, that's good. That way they won't be able to sue you if you chop the wrong bits off." No one really lost their temper. This was all part of hanging around.
"What about you, Johnny? What do you want to be?"
"Dunno."
Didn't you go to the careers evening last week?"
Johnny nodded. It had been full of great futures. There was a great future in retail marketing. There was a great future in wholesale distribution. There was a great future in the armed forces, although probably not for Big Mac, who'd been allowed to hold a machine gun and had dropped it on his foot. But Johnny couldn't find a great future with any future in it. "What I want to be," he said, "is something they haven't got a name for yet."
"Oh yeah? Like, in 2 years' time, someone's going to invent the Vogelsplat, and when they start looking around for Vogelsplat operators, you're going to be first in line, right?"
They went through the cemetery. The others, without saying anything, bunched up slightly, but there were no dead people around. "You can't just hang around waiting for the great futures. That's the point," Johnny murmured. "Hey," said Yoles in a dismally jolly voice. "My mum says, why don't you guys come to church tonight?"
"It won't work," said Wobbler after a while. "You say that every week."
"She says it'll be good for you all, especially Simon."
"Simon?"
"May," said Big Mac. "She says you need looking after."
"I didn't know you were called Simon."
Big Mac sighed. He had blackberry skins on his t-shirt, a suede haircut, great big boots, great big suspenders, and love and hat in ink on his knuckles. The E kept rubbing off. But for some reason, Yoles's mum thought that he needed a proper home. Big Mac lived in dread that Bazza and Skaz, the only other official skins in Blackberry, would find out and confiscate his official suspenders. "She said you're all growing up heathens," said Yoles. "Well, I'm going to a funeral at the crematorium tomorrow, said Johnny. That's almost church.
Anyone important? Said Wobbler.
I'm not sure. Johnny was amazed that so many people had come to Thomas Atkins's funeral, but that was because they'd really come to the one before it. All there was for Atkins's was himself and a stiff-looking old man in a blazer from the British Legion, and the nurse from Sunshine Acres. And the vicar, who did his best but had never met Tommy Atkins, so had to put together his sermon out of a sort of kit of proper things to say. And then there was some recorded organ music, and that was it. The chapel smelled of new wood and floor polish. The three others kept looking at Johnny in an embarrassed way, as if they felt he shouldn't be there but didn't know exactly how to put it. He heard a faint sound behind him just as the recorded music started up. He turned around and there were the dead, seated in rows. The alderman had taken his hat off and was sitting stiffly at attention. Even William Stickers had tried to look respectable. Solomon Einstein's hair stood out like a halo. The nurse was talking to the man in the blazer. Johnny leaned back so that he could speak to Mr. Fletcher. "Why are you here?" he whispered. "Oh, it's allowed," said Mr. Fletcher. "We used to go to all of the funerals in the cemetery. Help them settle in. Make them welcome. It's always a little bit of a shock." "Oh. And, seeing as you were here, we thought we'd see if we could make it. Mr. Vicenti said it was worth a try. We're getting better at it." The nurse handed Tommy Atkins's box to the British Legion man and walked out, waving at Johnny uncertainly as she went past. And then the vicar ushered the man through another door, giving Johnny another funny look. Outside, the October sun was shining weakly, but it was still managing to shine. Johnny went outside and waited. Eventually the man came out, holding 2 boxes this time. Said Johnny, standing up.
Yes, lad? The lady from the home said you're doing a project for school."
Doing a project? It was amazing. If Saddam Hussein had said he was doing a school project, he'd have found life a lot easier. Yeah. Can I ask you some stuff?
"Oh, of course, yes."
The man sat down heavily on one of the benches. He walked with a limp and sat with one leg stretched out straight in front of him. Johnny was surprised to see that he was probably as old as Grandad, but he had that dried-out, sun-tanned look of a man who keeps himself fit and is probably still going to be captain of the bowling club when he's 80. "Well, when Mr. Atkins said, he used to say that he was the one. I know about the Blackberry Pals. I know they all got killed except for him, but I don't think that's what he meant." You know about the Pals, do you? How?" "Oh, I read it in an old newspaper."
"Oh, but you don't know about Tommy Atkins?"
"Well, yeah,
No, I mean Tommy Atkins. I meant why he was so proud of the name. What the name meant."
I don't understand that."
"Oh, what do they teach you in school these days?"
Johnny didn't answer. He could tell it wasn't really a question.
"You see, in the Great War, the First World War, when a new recruit joined the army, he had to fill in his paybook, yes? You know, name and address and that sort of thing. And to help them do it, the army did a kind of guide to how to fill it in. And on the guide, where it said name, they put Thomas Atkins. It was just a name, just to show them that that's where their name should be, like John Smith. But, well, it became a sort of a joke. Tommy Atkins came to mean the average soldier."
"Oh, like the man in the street?"
"Yes, very much like that. It was a nickname for a soldier, I do know that. Tommy Atkins, the British Tommy."
"Oh, so, in a way, all soldiers were Tommy Atkins."
"Yes, I suppose you could put it like that." Of course, that's a rather fanciful way of...
Ah, but he was a real person. He smoked a pipe and everything.
Well, I suppose the army used it because they thought it was a common sort of name. So there was bound to be a real Tommy Atkins somewhere. I know he was very proud of his name. I do know that.
Was he the last man alive who fought in the war?
Oh, no. Good heavens, no. But he was the last one from around here, that's for certain. The last of the pals.
Johnny felt a change in the air.
He was a strange old boy. I used to go and see him every year at...
There was a noise that might be made if a handful of silence was stretched thin and then plucked like a guitar string. Johnny looked around. Now there were 3 people sitting on the bench. Tommy Atkins had his peaked hat on his knees. The uniform didn't really fit. He was still an old man, so his skinny neck stuck out of his collar like a tortoise's. He had an old-fashioned sort of face, one designed to wear a cloth cap and work in the rubber boot factory. He saw Johnny staring at him and winked, and gave him the thumbs-up sign. And then he went back to gazing intently at the road leading into the parking lot. Behind Johnny, the dead filed quietly out of the building, the older ones coming through the wall, the younger ones still using the door out of habit. They didn't say anything. They just stood and looked expectantly towards the main road, where, marching through the cars, were the Blackberry Pals.